Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in the People in Fundraising weekly nonprofit podcast series. Today is Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. And I'm very excited to welcome Kathy Drucquer Duff to our podcast today. Good afternoon, Kathy.
Hey, Tim, how are you? And thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. Kathy, just for reference here, in my day job, Kathy has done some consulting for Weber State University. I met her in person about 18 months ago. And said, I thought in my head, I've got to get you on the podcast. And thankfully you said yes. And here we are today. So if you can please tell our audience a little bit about who you are professionally, where they can find information about you, connect with you, Kathy, that'd be great first.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Tim, and we'd love to. I am, as Tim said, I'm a consultant. I work in the higher education space, healthcare space, as well as nonprofit space. Our firm, KDD Philanthropy, was really founded around our love for building teams. And building teams, whatever that can look like. Everything we do is around fundraising essentials, strategic talent management. We do occasionally work with boards. We work with a lot of leaders in building comfort around extending invitations. And we're a big believer that we are in this business to build relationships that will lead to generosity. So you can find out more about us, and we do webinars, we do on-site training, host of other things that are on our website, which is at kddphilanthropy.com. We do publish a monthly blog that we try to keep it timely with things that we're hearing from our clients, things that they want to talk about, and we post that monthly on LinkedIn. So we welcome connections that way as well. Thank you, Tim.
Awesome. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for going through all of those resources. I know that's really helpful for other people that listen and watch these podcasts, just to make sure, hey, if I wanted to follow up, I know where to go. So thank you for that. So our next part, Kathy, of the format is how I start every conversation when we get in terms of the questions, where we get to learning about you. So if you can take a few minutes to first tell our audience how you entered the fundraising profession and sort of how your career has gotten to the point you're at today, please.
Sure. Well, I think like most of us, I fell into this industry by accident. I was working in the hospitality sector and had a dear friend that was in hotel sales. And he called me one day to say that he was leaving the industry because he was taking a job at his alma mater in the alumni office. And as he was talking about what his role was, I was like, wait, what? Wait, there's a job like that? And you can get paid to talk about your alma mater in great ways and make connections. And I was like, I want that job. And 6 months later, he called me and said, my job just opened up at your alma mater. We had graduated from the same system, California State University system. He was at Cal Poly. I graduated from San Diego State. I had been very active in student government and other things, had stayed in touch with a lot of the leadership on the campus. Really, it was just an incredible gift going through the interview process, talking to people that I considered to be mentors, and talk about really what this whole field of advancement was. And so my first role was at my alma mater. It was in the alumni office. It was really helping them convert from what had traditionally been back then a membership program to bringing them into two programs. One would be membership and one would be fundraising. As I started to see, and our campus was at that time, 1994, I know I'm dating myself, was just really starting fundraising for the first time. I started seeing as we were hiring a fundraising staff, I was like, oh my gosh, I could meet with alums and people in the community, talk about what a great asset and resource this campus is and invite them to make gifts. And so that really started my journey. My first role in fundraising was with parents and families. Our campus at that time was really like a lot of campuses just launching parent fundraising and parent engagement. And so I had that opportunity. And then through progressive positions over 14 years at that campus, really got exposed to every level. I'll just make one quick detour. And that was after working in Major Gifts, I was invited to manage our annual fund. And I'll be honest, at the time, I was like, what did I do wrong? I've been doing Major Gift fundraising, and now you're asking me to do annual. It was the best career turn I could have ever taken. It gave me such an incredible appreciation for participation. It really allowed us to build our own program. Phone supervisors that we started coaching, they became our first annual fund officers for the institution. Really built that pipeline. We tried our first metrics out with them. Really got to experiment and take risks. And so I often say that I just was so fortunate that the leadership at that time knew about my commitment to the campus, but didn't know how that was going to shape really my, I guess, even my mantra for fundraising. I mean, it really has been about we build relationships that will lead to generosity. It's never been about the amount. It's been about what does this relationship look like over time. And so, but I did know that I wanted to consult. I often really feel that our profession is like education. We're educating people about the power of giving. And so through that, I had a mentor that told me if I really wanted to consult, I couldn't work only for my alma mater. That was kind of a painful twist in the road. I was happy. I loved where I was working. We had a fantastic team. But I'd had a board member who had on more than one occasion said, we'd love to chat with you and see about you coming to work for us. And so I did. I spent 4 years in healthcare. Was an absolutely incredible opportunity and experience. It was an organization that was moving from capital fundraising to initiative-based fundraising, which we had done a lot of in higher education. I spent the last 3 years of being internal. So all in all, 21 years in-house, and we are now into the second quarter of our 11th year of full-time consulting. So
Whoa.
yeah, so I think like for so many of us, it was a very twisted road. It wasn't a clear road. Never in my wildest dreams did I even know what advancement was or that there was a career. And I find that actually in all of the hiring that I've done over the years, I've only had two people who knew when they were at some age or in college, just two, that fundraising was the profession. And I love that we really, if you believe in a mission
Mm.
and you want to talk about that mission and you want to be strategic, you can be very successful at all levels of advancement. And I love in this role that you get to show up who you are.
Yeah.
You really get to show up who you are, and then you get to expand those skills and expand your toolbox. And so, for anyone who is considering coming into advancement, check us out. It's a great career and so much opportunity to really make a difference for organizations and missions that you care about.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. I have at least one follow-up, and it is as you were going from the hotel industry to your first entree in fundraising and advancement, what resources did you draw upon? And you mentioned two mentors. Were there other people? Were there conferences, organizations
Yeah.
that also were helpful to kind of help you with
Yeah.
that learning?
Without a doubt, Case was incredibly helpful.
Mm.
And the way that, Case has the Madison conference for if you're brand new every summer, they have about, I think, different topics. And so I had the opportunity to go to that alumni conference my first year. I was also fortunate being a part of a bigger system, California State University system. They had an advancement academy that was just launching. And so it was fairly common a couple times a year that whatever role you were in, you like-minded. But for those who are thinking about path, curiosity is really important. To want to learn, to have that ability to always be growing. There are some careers that you train for and you get into it. Advancement work is that way. We're constantly evolving, which is fantastic.
Right.
But that means that the way things, even 2 years ago, we have to be able to shift. And so I would encourage people to think about a resource so available. You can go on LinkedIn 5 minutes a day and read different articles, look at different things, podcasts, books, having conversations. And I think a lot of us are realizing that collaboration, and even if you're in a team of two people, person A, how are you approaching this donor? Person B, how would you approach it? And I think that's one of the things that makes it fun
Yeah.
is that we really have that ability to learn because we're not competing. We all have different missions, but there's enough out there. Who do you respect? Who do you informational interviews? I mean, I fortunate in that. Oh, I went from that alumni side, from hospitality, then to the alumni, and then I saw doing that. That I think is my sweet spot. That's where I want to
Right.
be.
Yeah.
Who's willing to share, but you have to ask. They're not just going to give it. You have to ask. And so we're a big believer about shadowing and reverse shadowing. So shadowing is when I get to go with someone who perhaps has more experience than me and see how they would run a meeting, whether that's a stewardship or alumni, whatever, where you are in the role. And reverse shadowing is when you ask your boss to come and they will critique and give you feedback, and they can also fill the gaps. So if someone asks me something and I'm newer and I don't know the answer, my supervisor or someone else can help fill that in. And just to get to see those different styles
Yeah.
allow you to grow your toolbox as well.
That's great. I have never heard the term reverse shadowing, so I wrote that down. That's very helpful.
Yeah, we love it. And it was something, especially in my last role at the University of California, San Diego, that I regularly would go out with newer staff. And you have to set up an environment that is not intimidating because it's naturally like, oh my gosh, my boss is here and they want me to go.
Right.
And what I always say is just go in your groove, but think of it as a partnership. But I want you to lead the meeting. But if there's a point, it's almost like, that show, Phone a Friend, when with the
Oh,
millionaire who wants to be a millionaire, you'd phone a friend. It gives you that really wonderful resource, but it also allows you, wow, I loved how she said this, or how he said this, or how they said this. And then they hear how I say it. And now I get to expand my style. And it's a way, like I said, it feels a little intimidating when we talk about it, but once you get into it, it's really fun. And there's a lot of common themes that you can talk about. So I think it's fantastic.
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. As you mentioned, Kathy, you have led KDD Philanthropy for now 11 years. And one of the questions I had that was really curious to hear your response is the second question. So, what consistently brings you the most satisfaction? And then conversely, the most challenge as a fundraising coach and consultant?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I feel like every day is a gift. I mean, I absolutely love what I do, and I love the people that I'm working with. In fact, I had a training this morning that we did for a local nonprofit, and I was telling them as I was walking out the door, I mean, every single person in that room loves the organization. They love that they are in a position to help educate others. And so satisfaction absolutely comes from we all have this. We want to see this industry continue to flourish. We want to see our organizations continue to flourish. Many of us have chosen to be in this business because we love relationships. We love building those relationships. But an important piece of that is how are we overlaying the strategy to it? And
Yes.
so to be able to take that strategic element and that relationship element, and whether you're that extrovert or you're an introvert, you can be successful in this role. It's about having conversations. So I get incredible satisfaction about how are we normalizing how we talk about generosity. And that's a big thing that we do at our firm is really looking at how are we building comfort that philanthropy truly is the enhancer. And for people who work in advancement, we get that. But we have so many natural partners that are intimidated or they don't understand or they want the money part, but they perhaps don't want some of the hard work that goes with it. And
Yeah.
so when we can build that comfort and someone else becomes a joiner, they're like, they've come to the dark side and they're like, I get it. I get that actually conversations around giving and generosity bring joy. And
Yeah.
so that is huge, 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 huge. I think there's a couple of challenges, and Tim, you actually heard me even when I was at Weber talk about this, that we have got to get a hold of our turnover rates.
Yeah.
There is so much in this business that is built on trust. And yet, if we continue to have fundraisers, and I call out fundraisers because the tenure of time in every other part of advancement is longer
Sure.
than fundraising and the fundraisers. And so I find that that is hard when you see the amount of turnover we're having. Two, we are having more folks who are coming in to lead, whether it be higher education, healthcare, nonprofit, who have not been a fundraiser. And I don't think you have to be. I think you can be an exceptional leader, but they come in and they immediately are just more, more, more. You
Yeah.
have to raise more. And it's not more by 3% or 5%. It's we need to double by next year. That is not realistic. And so when I see the level of burnout that is taking place, really good people who are unfortunately leaving the institutions that they care so much about because they're now being asked to do so much. And so I find, and I'll make jokes about that. You start your job, you've got a fundraising plate, I mean, a buffet plate, and then we go to the buffet station. And most fundraisers now are running franchises. There are so many things going on. We
Yeah.
need to get back to the basics. And you've heard me say that we build relationships that lead to generosity. Please allow your advancement people to do that.
Yeah.
Because the more that we water down these roles on top of the mounting pressure, we're going to see turnover go up and
Yeah.
not down. And I don't know how we can be sustainable as an industry when we are just flipping people like this. And so, for folks who are newer, please take the time to get those basic, the ground, be able to qualify, be able to move people through the relationship. Stay at an organization so that you really have that talent and those skills. You'll have plenty of opportunity, but if you move too often, what we're seeing is people, they don't have enough of the foundational skills. They're burning out faster. And then you add the leadership. So that's a lot. And if since I'm just going to say one other thing, I am becoming, and I really am believing more and more every day in what AI can do for us. And for those of you on the line who've known me for a while, know that I was pretty like, this is a relationship industry.
Yeah.
I really am coming around to see all of the ways it can help, but we are still people to people through people industry. And I am worried that some of the evolutions that are taking place are happening so quickly.
Yes.
They're being implemented without pilots, like pilot programs, and not testing, that we are going to see some continued erosion of trust.
Yeah. Agreed. Totally. And I've had, on the topic of burnout, I've had a few guests in the last year, 18 months, who have spoken about that as well. And they ended up leaving institutions to start their own consulting firms, or they join up with a colleague or two and go out on their own, because that is such a critically tricky
It is.
challenge that we have right now for lots of reasons that you articulated.
It is. And I think, it requires those who are making hires, both at the advancement level and the leadership level, to have a greater awareness around what is doable. And
Yeah.
for each and everything that we are adding onto a plate, there needs to be much more conversation around what comes off the plate.
Yes.
Um, I love that fundraisers and advancement professionals as a whole, we tend to be pleasers. We tend to say yes. We tend to say, yeah, I'm happy to do that at our own detriment. And I think we're at this moment, and we've been at this moment now for a few years, that there has to be more no. There absolutely has to be more no. Staffs have to be more empowered to be honest about I can do this and do this well, because our best work comes when we are proactive. And some of the things that we just talked about where there is not satisfaction is causing people to be reactive. And when I'm reactive, everything's going at different levels versus when I'm proactive, I'm breathing, it's strategic,
Yes.
we're able to be thoughtful, we remember to bring people into the conversation, there's ownership. When we're reactive, it's siloed, it's all the things that don't bring joy. And
Right.
so, when I see people that are burning out, one of them, I'll say, when was the last time you had a donor meeting? When was the last time that you did something that reminded you of why you're doing this work?
Oh, yeah.
So if it's, for you, it's when was the last time you walked across campus and saw the hub of students? In the hospital, it's going through the ER, going through a triage area and really seeing what happens. With our nonprofits, it's looking at our recipients. It's seeing how are we really making this change? And when we get pulled too far away from that, then we just get buried. We get buried in the bureaucracy, and we get buried in the fact that I think we have a choice of how we approach this work, and we've got to approach it in a way that brings joy. Otherwise, the burnout is there.
Totally. Yeah. Well put. Thank you. Speaking of challenges, I know we're keeping it not too light at this part of the
Yeah.
conversation, but also topical. Have you or how have you seen your clients' operations impacted by recent federal administrative cuts to nonprofit fundraising? And how have you generally counseled these clients that are experiencing significant threats to their operating models?
It's a great question, and I do it a couple different ways. And I am absolutely not making light in any way of what we're going through, but this is not the first time that our industry, for one way or another, is under attack. And so I think the first thing is for leaders who have been through it before. It is paramount that you are sharing with your teams that we are a cyclical business. And
Yeah.
there are times where it is going to be hard. And there are some things right now that are making it exceptionally hard. The client I was with this morning is a food bank. And so you look at what is happening with some of the national discussion, on top of now you add in the government shutdown, there is it is so being impacted. And yet the conversation is we can't go back to need because people are only going to give to need once and maybe twice, even when they see that right now this need, I mean, it's right there. You cannot miss it.
Yeah.
And so it is, how do we still talk about our work aspirationally? How do we talk about how philanthropy is a driver? So many donors want sustainability and sustainability of the organizations they care about. Well, there's very few ways that they can get that
Yeah.
outside of giving and what philanthropy does. And so that is certainly one of the conversations. The other, and it dovetails into the no, is that, we have several clients that are down FTEs. They are in budget freezes. In some cases, there have been layoffs, there's been cuts. And in all of that, there's the human, it feels, I mean, it hurts. It hurts when we're doing that. And yet, it also makes us, those who are still here, we want to dig it even further because the need is even greater. And it's that ability to recognize what is the greatest asset that you bring. And so when we're talking to our clients, we're really trying to help ground what is it that you truly bring to your organization and how do you stay true to that. So a lot of conversations around what meetings can you be excused from?
Mm.
Where do if I've got an 8-hour day, for most fundraisers, we're talking 45, or advancement staff, 45, maybe 50 hours a week. And I know there's some that do more. We try to say, hey, got to cap it somewhere. But at 50 hours a week, if I'm spending 30 of that in meetings or 40 of that in meetings that is not generating revenue,
Yeah.
that's part of the issue. So I do think that again, we saw this after 9/11, we saw it with the bubble pop, we saw it in 2008. There's just been several times where something gobsmacks us, hits us, and I look at it, it's your opportunity to take a step back. What are we doing well? What should be coming off our plate? And how are we going to recalibrate in a way that we can explain that? It's not that we're shirking responsibilities, it's saying we are the team that have been brought in to
Yeah.
build relationships that lead to generosity. Each and every time you ask me to do something else, I'm not building that relationship, which means the generosity is going to shrink at a time where you need it more than ever. So I think in summary, Tim, it is important. We are a industry that is positive by nature. So I think we need to keep that positivity, but I think we need to be real, but we need to point out to our donors and our donor community, why us? Why should they continue to invest in us? What is this partnership? Because it really is a partnership. How does this partnership and the work that we're doing together actually allow during very difficult times to still, we can be successful, we can innovate, we can take risks, but that may mean that we're going to do our business a little bit different.
Yeah. That is both inspirational and realistic. These are what we can actually do to affect change and not get burned out. I love that.
Yeah, and we've got to give grace. I mean,
Yeah.
that you have to be able to recognize that your colleagues are in the same boat. We are all working extra hard. We're trying to figure out how to get this. Somebody doesn't come in to screw my day. They don't.
Yeah.
It happens though through because we're reactive. I forgot to bring someone in. And so I think a big piece of this is that we are all doing the best that we can. And if you go back 5 years ago when especially when COVID was, we were right in it, everyone was providing so much grace
Yes.
and so much understanding. If you didn't know how to work your Zoom or you had a pet climbing over your head in the middle of the meeting, it was like, you know what? These are really difficult times. We still need to have that grace. We're going to have differences.
Yeah.
One of the things I love that we are seeing as we continue, as our donor community evolves, is there is more and more alignment to donor values. They really are looking to partner with organizations. That's a huge win for us. So it's being able to look for, yes, those silver linings, but also, where and how do we make sure that we're making the greatest investment for our organizations?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, Kathy. I was very curious in doing my little bit of research ahead of time, which I do for every guest, without it being kind of creepy or relying too much on what else is on the internet about the person, the career on LinkedIn and such. But there's a quote on your website, KDD Philanthropy website, that is from the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. And it says, quote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step," end quote. And I'm just very curious, um, why does that quote speak to you? And why would you, what was the decision, the thought
Yeah.
process to put it on your website, please?
Yeah. Thank you. Really nice question. We tend to, I was very fortunate when I worked at Sharp Healthcare that we started every meeting with a reflection, and a reflection was almost always a quote. Occasionally it was a story, but it was a quote. And so that was something I adopted because I think it can help set the tone. And when you think about what we're doing, a lot of times people think we can just cast this net, but literally we build our communities one donor at a time. And so that quote speaks to me because I think it recognizes that wherever we are a small piece of that journey. And
Yeah.
so what are we doing in our time and in that place to help with that? Because when you look and you reflect, and you see someone that perhaps, they make their first $1 million gift. And then we do the anatomy of a gift and we go back and we see when did they make their first gift? How many different touch points have they had with this organization over time?
Yeah.
It is a lot of different people and it's small steps
Yes.
that glue and bring it together. And so that reflection, I think, speaks to me because I think it provides hope. It suggests that we are in a community together.
Yes.
But it also, strategy is one of the big things that we really believe in. And it suggests that to get each of those steps, you're going to have to be strategic, but you're also going to have to work with others. So,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah,
That is
we're big into reflections. We are big into quotes. We love to set the stage with wisdom from others,
yeah.
and then be able to apply that practicality.
I love that. I wrote down start the day with a reflection, and what you just added there too is really inspiring. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Speaking of quotes, I often will put together questionnaires for my podcast guests that draw a quote or two from entertainers, artists, people that are culturally prominent, because I think there can be snippets of what they say in their particular field that apply to nonprofit work. And I think you were the first one that I've asked this question about, and it just felt fitting given your founding role of KDD Philanthropy. So it comes from the actor Will Smith, who once remarked, quote, "When you start something new, humble yourself to the craft," end quote. So as you talked earlier about spending 21 years in institutional operations teams, and then the last 11 years with KDD Philanthropy, launching it and getting it to this point today, what experiences on the word reflection, what experiences reflecting back do you feel like had humbled you as the founder and that kind of rooted you again to your truth, your guiding principles, things like that?
Okay, that's a good one. I think, Tim, it's probably a couple of things. And I think that the work that we do, period, is humbling because, you know, tomorrow I'm going to be at Stanford and I'll be working with the Packard Foundation. And in that role, I get to work with some of the physicians. And I mean, I see the absolutely incredible work that they're doing. And it is incredibly humbling when you have someone who wants to fuel innovation or fuel change or to solve a problem or to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And we're that teeny tiny little cog. I often say that we're a matchmaker. And so I find it, I mean, we are around some of the most brilliant minds when it comes to the people we staff. And
Yeah,
we get to work with folks who have been wildly successful, wildly lucky, wildly, something has come to them, but they recognize that they can be better and do something better and be a part of something. And
yeah,
we get to watch that. We get to
yeah,
see it. And for people that I'm not an ego person, and so I love that I can be behind the scenes creating magic. And yet it's rare that the fundraiser is called out. We call the donor out. We're going to call, like in this case, the physician out.
yeah,
But if you're someone who is really looking to be a part of where we are going, so I just find it incredibly humbling. I would say the other thing is when you have a donor who is moved to tears, that they are so appreciative that they are in this position in life, that they can endow something, that they can put something towards clinical trials, that they are underwriting students to go on and do great things. I mean, that should be the definition of humble in the dictionary because it's just, you have someone, they've been, like I said, wildly successful or wildly lucky or a bit of both. And here they are parting with, when you give money, that is one of the most emotional, tangible things. And they're thanking us. They're
yes,
thanking
yeah,
us for creating the opportunity. They're thanking whoever the recipients, how they get to do this. And you're watching them and it's like, wow.
yeah.
It is an incredible reminder of the depth of human emotions. It's an incredible reminder of what happens when people come together.
Mm,
And that we are just somewhere in that is wow. And it's not only humbling, it is such an honor.
Yeah.
True honor to be a part of that. And I love when I will pick up something now from my alma mater and I'll read about something that someone I'm like, wow, I remember when they made their first gift
Oh,
and they
yeah.
were just starting their journey and they were learning. Because so much of what we do now in this profession is we are educating people on how to give, what it feels like to give. Sometimes we're educating that, you've done something incredible and you're going to get all kinds of attention. And they're going to be like, I don't want that attention.
Right, right.
Helping guide, anonymous versus public versus when do you share all that? I don't know. I think it's incredibly cool.
Yes. I loved that answer. That was beautifully put, Kathy. Thank you.
Well,
Um,
thank you. That was like, I didn't expect that. So I kind of like that we said that we were going to be completely extemporaneous, and we are.
Totally fine. Yeah, and I think on that note about humility and how oftentimes, as you said, the physician, the donor, um, those are the people, the entities that get the recognition, and rightfully so. And then there's the fundraiser. And I would say from my part of the ecosystem, prospect management and research, like we are even further behind the fundraiser, but providing the strategic intelligence all along to say, based on what I know about this entity, whether it's a company, foundation, or a person, there might be a match here. Now the fundraiser, you go track it down and make it happen. And that, yeah, that is something I think I'll just speak for myself. I feel like in my career, that's been a little bit of a challenge
Hmm.
where it's like, well, wait a minute. We're not talking about the person processing the gift or the person that does the stewardship report, the prospect researcher, the people that do the marketing materials. But in the office, hey, after all the big celebration happens, the fundraiser gets the attention, and it's like, well, yeah, but you were helped. A good number of people helped stand you up. You were stood up by people to get to that point too.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of folks, if they're new to advancement or they're not familiar with advancement, is the level of team sport that
Yeah,
this is. And I always look to the leaders that can recognize all of the different pieces that come together. Um, I've heard it said that, oh, well, the fundraisers get the glory. They get the glory of being able to go out and do that. There is no glory without how are we talking about impact? There is none of the good conversations that take place without the great work that happens in the annual fund that identifies,
yeah,
prospect management identifies. And so I think, it is one of the things that I know that later in my career we built into interview questions about how do you want to be recognized? Because some people want to be recognized in front of the room. Some people, that is the worst thing that could ever happen.
right.
But we need, as an industry, to recognize how are we expressing gratitude for each and every role, because there is no work for the fundraisers to do without all of the pieces. And I actually, we were talking earlier about satisfaction and challenges. I do think when I look at where the industry was when I first got in, we only talked about the fundraiser. Didn't talk about what was going on. Again, I worked in higher education. We didn't talk about alumni. We didn't talk about stewardship. We didn't talk about events. We didn't talk about all the folks that the faculty. I mean, we obviously talked about them, but we didn't talk about those contributions. And I think that as this has become recognized more as a team sport. In fact, one of my favorite stats that I read a few years ago, and I've now seen a few other places, that for donors to stay with organizations, they have to have at least 3 relationships. And so I love that because it takes the eye off of, when I first got in this role, you really couldn't make a gift without a fundraiser because we didn't have websites. We didn't have places where you could click and make the gift. Yeah, you could write a check and send it in, but the fundraiser was the one who got it and then had the conversation. And so I love that most of our organizations have evolved to this place where the fundraiser is a piece of it. The reality in 2025, you don't even need a fundraiser
Mm,
because I can go on your site, I can make the gift. Stewardship can do something. You can then put it through and look at, hey, is there additional capacity or is there additional, what can we learn about them?
yeah.
So truth of the matter is it's the fundraiser role is going quote unquote down because we are putting a greater emphasis on the entire advancement shop, as well as then what are our relationships with our natural partners across our organizations, including volunteers, boards, et cetera. I think it's becoming much better weighted.
Yes. And I think it's also striking to your point earlier, which was well put, the high rate of turnover among fundraisers compared to the relative stability and longevity of other pieces, critical pieces of the fundraising operation. Speaking from I've only had 3 different employers in my career, but even at all three, it was pretty consistent that people in prospect management, the gift processing team, stewardship, by and large, were in it for a longer haul of our tenure.
Right.
So that's just interesting.
And we're still fairly new, although we've always had transferable hires, that there's been a much greater effort on do we hire someone who's a seasoned fundraiser or do we hire someone that is transferable? And the early data is showing that those who make a conscious decision to enter advancement are staying in their roles longer than seasoned
Interesting.
staff. So I'm here for it. I'm like, who's coming in, and what is the legacy you can leave? And at least on the fundraising side, it's 3 years for you to become high performing.
Yeah.
If you leave your job every 16 months, you'll never even get the joy of being high performing, but you're also not getting some of those fundamental foundational skills. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kathy, this has been just a delightful conversation. And I gotta say, something as an aside, I posted this week on LinkedIn. I have a little index card that I actually didn't put in front of my computer today. And the index card, I'll show it really quick.
I want to see it.
Because now I feel like hypocrite's too strong of a word, but I posted this on LinkedIn, and these are the words I typically go to when I am conducting an interview, and they're filler and they don't really add to the conversation. So awesome, just, like, and my goodness, I think at least a half dozen times I've said the word just today. So please, if you follow me on LinkedIn and you saw this post, hold me accountable. Uh,
It's a work in progress, Tim.
Thank you for that. And that you mentioned earlier, the topic of grace. You just gave me grace in that respect.
I'm glad we're role modeling what we're talking about. So,
Absolutely. Well, Kathy, I have really enjoyed our time together today and look forward to you coming back to campus at some point and wish you all the best until our paths meet in real life again.
well, Tim,
And
it was great to see you and what an honor to be included. Thank you for the good work that you're doing and getting different voices out there so we can learn from each other and continue to evolve this very important industry that we love so much.
my pleasure. And I'm just delighted. Well, there I did it again. Just the word just. Dang it. I am honored to have you on today and look forward to cheering you on in your endeavors. And to our audience, thank you for supporting people in fundraising in all the ways that you do, including recommendations for future guests. Please email me at peopleinfundraising@gmail.com if you have recommendations, including self-nominations. And you'll be able to find Kathy Drucquer Duff's conversation on these platforms in the next few weeks. LinkedIn, which will have a link to the YouTube video, Podbean, which will be the audio only conversation, and my website, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com, which is sponsored, and I'm very grateful for it, by our 100th guest in People in Fundraising, Luis Diaz. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you to our audience. And I wish you the rest of your day is a good one, Kathy.
Take good care.
You too.